And now we have ATEX Resources, and we're going to hear from Ben Pullinger, the President and CEO.
Great to see you again.
Thank you, sir.
How are you doing today?
Yeah, good.
Good afternoon, and thank you all for attending our presentation today. It's great to be here, and it's great to be talking about Valeriano and what we've done in Phase 4 at a time where I was so well set up by the panelists that were on here earlier, talking about the need for copper, the need for consolidation, and smart financings. This is a little snapshot of who we are. You know, we're an exploration company. We drill holes in the ground. We generate value through doing this. We're on our way to earning 100% of what we think is a spectacular asset in the Atacama region of Chile. We are backed by a board and team who have been there and done this before in this part of the world and other parts of the world, and have a pretty spectacular shareholder base as well, with Pierre Lassonde being our major shareholder. And going back to just finishing up the point on that 100%, we have one more payment left to make on this property in August next year that gets us 100% of this project and puts that bullet point behind us as well. You know, this slide, I think, really sets up the rest of the presentation as we talk about the fact that I think the hardest thing to ever get across, the two things that are hardest to get across in presentations are scale, in terms of size of things, which we'll touch on later, and time. Everything that you see there on that rare opportunity slide is something that we've done in the last 3 years. In the last 3 years, we've taken something that was a geological curiosity that had 2 drill holes into it that had 1,000 meters of continuous vertical mineralization, turned that into a 1.4 billion ton resource. Yes, we drill holes really quickly, but I think more than anything else, it speaks to the quality of this project. Every drill hole we put into this project returns about 1,000 meters of continuous mineralization at greater than 0.4 copper equivalent with no internal waste. So if you drill a hole that's 2,000 meters long, we're anywhere between 1,000 and 1,400 meters of mineralization in each of those holes. Those holes are 200 meters apart, and within that, you know, we defined a higher grade trend, which is really important for the story. We want to find that economic center, that engine that has that generates the cash flow to put the rest of this into production. And along the way in Phase 4, which we're just wrapping up right now, I think we have 1 or 2 more releases to put out about this. We have been able to really see the geological concept evolving, seen continuity, seen scalability, and we'll touch on this later. The last hole that we drilled and released, we saw optionality. We put out 68 meters at 2.02% sitting on top of the porphyry. Tantalizing. We've got more holes to drill and follow up in Phase 5, but showing that we have the optionality for something that might pay for the big show, and the scale that we still don't know how big the granodiorite that hosts all this mineralization is. To date, we've got it defined by about 1.2 kilometers by a kilometer, by about a kilometer deep, and still open in all directions. We have not stepped outside of the mineralization on this project. It's just a spectacular project. Where we are, I mean, it takes no introduction to know you want to be. If you're in copper, you want to be on this porphyry superhighway. There was a gap in the belt here. We affectionately referred to it as the link belt. It was the belt that really links up the El Indio to Maricunga. Craig Nelson, our chairman, and Raymond, who the predecessor CEO who stays on the board, spent a lot of time around here discovering projects like Morro Fortuna, which you see there just to the north of us. If you look on the gray inset on the right-hand side of that slide, which is actually where I want to go right now, because I think this is something that makes this special, this story special, as it's not just about us. This is a district. When you look at us, Antofagasta, look at us and our neighbors to the north, the Encierro project, which is a joint venture between Antofagasta and Barrick, and El Morro Fortuna, the Nueva Union trend, you're looking at over 10 billion tons of copper resource inventory within 50 to 60 kilometers in Chile, 100% in Chile, all within 200 kilometers of the ocean. I think that's a pretty spectacular pedigree when you look at those projects, and that there hasn't really been meaningful exploration in this area in almost a decade. As I said, for the last 3 years, we've been drilling holes and have expanded from 2 holes that have proved up geological curiosity to 3 porphyry intersections to now something that's coming together in something much bigger. El Encierro is pretty much the mirror project to the north of us, and then Nuevo Union. And of course, when you look in the, on the bottom there, our friends at Hot Chile who are doing some really interesting stuff as well. This district is coming alive, and it feels like the stars are aligning at a time when the Chilean government wants to see increased copper production. They want to see permitting times. Every presentation or every panel discussion I saw today talked about permitting and jurisdiction. Chile is a place that's actively seeking to remove the impediments to bring copper production online, and consolidation. I think this is an area that's ripe for consolidation in the future. This is we talked about trying to put a scale on this. This is a little snapshot of our project. What you can see there is, Codelco exploring to the north of us, which is a new development, which is very exciting for us. Then you've got the El Encierro project as you move south, there in the center of the map, and our project all along this ridge, which is about a lithocap that's about 12 kilometers long. And just because Valeriano and El Encierro have been discovered so far does not mean that they are the only porphyry centers in this area. We truly believe that this is a cluster that's gaining momentum. You look at the combined resources, or in the case of El Encierro, the global inventory there, you're looking at about 5 billion tons of combined resource and growing. And it's just, when you look at the colors there, it's a spectacular part of the world to be exploring here. It's Atacama, high Andean Atacama Desert, with our camp and probably where this project will ultimately be accessed from at about 3,800 meters, and us drilling above on that Valeriano ridge. This is a little snapshot. As we've gone through, we talked about the resource earlier, the 1.4 billion tons at 0.67 copper equivalent. One important part of the story to get out of the way before we get into the rest of this is this slide on metallurgical test work. Usually when we quote our copper equivalent numbers, we use the numbers that we used, that we assumed for our resource, which you see at the bottom there. 90% recovery for copper, 70% for gold. Those are our two most important metals. This truly is a copper deposit, 70% roughly in copper, 30% in gold. When you look at the metallurgical test work that we completed and announced in October last year, we were able to achieve best-in-class recoveries of 95% for copper, 94% gold, produce a concentrate that is a premium concentrate, 30% copper, 12 grams per ton gold. This concentrate can travel anywhere in the world and unlock and be blended with other concentrates. And it really talks to the simplicity, in a world in which everyone wants things to be smart, this deposit gets dumber and dumber the more we drill it and more simple. This is a granodioritic intrusion entering a rhyolite basin. We're getting a little technical there, but the reason I point that out is because it's clean. There is no iron in the system, so we don't get a whole bunch of pyrite. There's no arsenic, no selenium, no deleterious elements in this. It's equigranular chalcopyrite as far as the eye can see. That's visually coarse-grained, visually fine-grained, metallurgically medium-grained, and it recovers really well and really sets this project up well for future success. Here's the resource that's underpinned by those numbers, 15.5 billion pounds of copper so far, almost 10 billion ounces of gold, and it is growing. When you look at the top right-hand side, just check, yep, right, your right, my left, over there, you see kind of the concept that we started off with this resource. 3 fingers of granodioric porphyry intruding the sea of rhyolite, precipitating a chalcopyrite in every direction. We have subsequently evolved that model, and we'll talk about that shortly. But that's really like the starting point for this Phase 4 program that we're just wrapping up, and already, as I said, have moved in a very quick, short amount of time to something that is a very sizable and exciting resource. Just from a quick snapshot of what this looks like geographically, it's very well set up for an underground operation. You can access it from either of those valleys on either side. See those arrows there to the north, that we've replaced those 3 fingers of granodiorite with something that's come together and is a more cohesive, consistent body, open along strike in both directions. Again, as I said, we've tested over 1 kilometer in all dimensions on this and still have not hit the edges of the system. It's amazing. And then the hardest thing always to get across in this presentation on the bottom left there is scale. When you look at that from the bottom of the valley where you would access this, where our camp is, and where this project starts, the top of that ridge that we have to drill for because unfortunately Mother Nature put these intrusions right under the top of that ridge, is 500 meters. And you can see it very well in that cross section there where the top 500 meters of the hole don't really hit much. There is leachable copper in there, but we don't talk about it too much. But as soon as you get kind of to that valley bottom, all the action starts. Within 200 meters of the valley bottom, you're in 0.3 copper mineralization. 200 meters below that, you're in that intrusive, and it keeps on getting bigger. And then on top of it, I don't have a laser pointer here to point it, but imagine just on top of the middle there, we now have 2% copper equivalent mineralization. It's got one hole into it, and we think that there's some scale to grow there as well. As I said, scalability and optionality are very much the key words of Phase 4. And this is what that looks like. It's a little complicated, so we'll walk through this to focus on the key elements here. One, I hope you can make them out, but in the middle of this, you can see the outlines of the three fingers that we started with. We have now drilled between those and extended them to the north and the south and confirmed that pink unit down the middle there, which is now 1.2 kilometers long, about 500 to 600 meters wide, 700 meters high, and this is just the porphyry dimensions that we're talking about. The intrusive dimensions here is now continuous. We've drilled between them, hit some pretty spectacular grades. Hole 16A, which is not listed on this, or you can see there, returned 114 meters at 1.42% copper equivalent. On the southern end, that's now anchored on the north with hole 26, which is the 122 meters at 1.6, or 68 meters at 2.2%. Again, using these are the resource assumptions that are used in that calculation. So if you use our network, that they're higher. But we've defined that the stipple red line there. We've defined a high-grade core that's over 1% copper equivalent. That runs through that. It's about 600 to 700 meters in length, about 300 meters wide, sitting within this bigger porphyry envelope. And just to throw some dimensions at you, if you take that 1.2 kilometers, multiply it by a width, multiply it by the height of that intrusive, throw some densities in there, you get about a target of 1 billion tons just for the intrusive. For every ton of intrusive we have, we typically see 2 to 3 tons of mineralized wall rock as well. It shows you where this project is going. And now on top of that, in that wall rock, we now see this the second late overprinting system highlighted there in hole 26, which is that 68 meters at 2.02%, open in all directions. And what would be really of interest when we come back and finish hole 27 there, which we had to stop because unfortunately Mother Nature intervened and we had to walk out of the program a little earlier than we were anticipating with heavy snowstorms. But that hole 27, which is drilling towards where hole 26, from the top of basically the top center of the image coming down, that's where we see the most silica outcropping on the project. It's the area of highest silica alteration and coincident with the mineralization that we see in 26. So we think there's a chance to come back and find something pretty interesting there as well. So again, scalability, we've taken something that was 3 fingers, we brought them together, turned them into a fist. It's open in both directions, and the optionality of something higher grade sitting on top of this that has the potential to maybe be developed as a separate operation and could potentially pay for the development of everything else. This has been really a game changer in terms of our exploration season for ATEX, on another game changer season before. It's very rare that as you drill something, explore it, it keeps getting better. So far, Valeriano is yet to disappoint. All of that sits within an area of about 3 kilometers that you can see on the right there in that red stippled line. That's a 3-kilometer big ultra-low resistivity anomaly overlying this. We've tested it for 1.2 kilometers. We have mineralization at surface that suggests that this trend might be 2 kilometers. This slide really is all to say, look at those numbers, it's getting bigger, it's getting better. We still haven't hit the edges yet, and we have a long way still to go. Ultimately, we've talked about consolidation as well. You have 2 world-class projects here within 5 kilometers of each other. We think they're part of a larger system. We think that there's a cluster here and that there might be more of this between. And I think if you were to fast forward from where we are today, 10 years into the future, I would love to say that both of these projects have come together, reaped true synergies, which is rare in this business, but also found 3 or 4 of these other porphyry centers around us. And this is a world-class and probably one of the best new jurisdictions for copper production in the world. In the interest of time, I'm just going to flip ahead to some other important key facts. We're working towards a PEA at the end of 2025. That means right now what we're doing is we're looking at network, we're looking at geotechnical, we're looking at hydrology. We're starting off all those component studies with the right partners that can help us advance this to the point at which we get to show what this looks like on an economic basis to the world at the end of next year, including a resource update along the way, which we think will show significant improvement on where we are today. We're well funded, we're backed by spectacular shareholders. We've seen a lot of action in the market with people getting FOMO, as to quote one fund manager, and having to buy this in the market because we're not in a hurry to raise equity because we're in a very good position. And one thing that I'd like to point out is those August 20, I know some of the previous panelists have been critical of warrants, but I will say that $8.9 million in warrants that comes due next year pretty much pays for our last property payment, taking us to 100%, meaning that any money that we have and any money that we bring in the future will be something that goes towards advancing this project. I'm also very excited to mention, and it's not covered in this presentation unfortunately, that we have a new board member. Chris Beer joined our board, and I'd like to joke about the fact that it was always hard to get money out of Arbum, but having Chris Beer join our board and do a private placement with us, putting $500,000 of his own money to work into the project right now is a huge validation for us, and we're very excited to have him on the team. Thank you guys for your attention today, and I hope you're all having fun here in Quebec.
Thank you, Ben. I just linked in with you.
Excellent.